Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle, where we talk every single Big Ten team, challenging the national SEC bias, and of course having a few laughs along the way. I'm JR, joined today by Zack Gugenheim and also Big Jeff, who I'll bring on here in just a minute. On this episode, we will predict our Big Ten superlatives for this year, like sleepers, breakout players in the Big Ten, and so much more. If you like that, hit that like button, subscribe. We appreciate you doing that. We are here on YouTube live on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights. Become a member, subscribe to our basketball channel as well, and follow us on Twitter, X, Twitter/X, Instagram, TikTok, all those good places at the Big Ten Huddle. Now, here's the guy who would never adjust his analytical power rankings 1 week before the season starts to show favor for the SEC like ESPN does, Zack Gugenheim.
It's wild how many people have tried to explain away why Clemson plummeted in FPI.
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
I'm gone. I'm not on
go?
the screen. There I am.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's got to be a flaw in the system if your analytics change from the beginning of preseason to the end, right?
Yeah.
Jeff, there's got to be something wrong, right?
I mean, that FPI is just a waste of time.
Thank you, Jeff.
It. Yeah.
You're more SP. You're
Of,
more SP plus, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I do like SP plus because it's statistically based. He's tweaking the model. We can poke holes in it as you can do any statistical model, but I do like it actually.
Yeah. FPI is just a garbage fire, in my opinion. So
Really weird. And during the season, I could tell you, like some of the stuff it does with the individual games, you're like, what? Yeah. Don't go by that.
Yeah.
Go by FanDuel.
Max says kind of nuts. Both Indiana and Illinois aren't top 25 in FPI right now. I mean, FPI just incorporates so much recruiting rankings and stuff, which I would understand that years ago, but I think with the transfer portal and development and stuff like that, I just don't think transfer rankings or recruiting rankings matter as much. They still matter, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they matter as much as they used to, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But that's just me.
FYI, Sagarin, their preseason power ratings are out, and the top three: Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon.
I've seen that. I've seen there are other ones. What's his name? I think Bud Davis on Twitter. He put his out there, and his top tier 1 teams of college football are literally Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame's the 4th in Sagarin. Yeah. And what's interesting about Sagarin, again, not that it's the end all be all. You can poke, as Jeff said, you can poke holes in all of them. Penn State and Ohio State are a good 1.5 higher than the next team, which is Oregon. And I mean, they are Notre Dame, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State are all Notre Dame's about a full point ahead of Texas. And then it's a pretty big gap, which is surprising to me.
Yeah. Philip says, now we have SJA, Sergeant Jeff's analytics. Hey, we're going to get Sergeant Jeff's analytics on Thursdays during the season, right, Jeff? You want to tell people about your show on Thursdays during the year?
My focus is going to be on individual games, so I'm going to pick up to 5 games against the FanDuel spread and give reasons why I think one team or the other is going to cover the spread. So it'll be very specific to games to get us ready for the weekend. I think it'll be
and like you said, you've in the past you've done this a lot, where you've gone through and tried to predict what the spread would be, and then try to figure out what's the best thing and stuff like that. So I mean, we don't do a ton of betting content on this show, but definitely if you are somebody likes to wager on FanDuel and stuff like that, this will be a good show for you. Or if you just like hearing about that stuff, because I think it's interesting and you might think it's interesting too, it'll be a good conversation to have. But we have some underrated games to get into first, so let's do that, gentlemen. The Big Ten is filled with big games this season, but what are the underrated games that need to also be considered? I have a few ideas. However, I want to hear from Jeff first. So Jeff, I don't want you to pick Ohio State, Penn State. I don't want you to pick, Penn State, Oregon, anything like that. What are some underrated games? We went through and saw a couple of them. We went game by game through our schedule prediction last episode or 2 episodes ago. What's an underrated game for you coming up this season in 2025?
So just the way I looked at it is that it would be a mid-tier team, and the outcome of a particular game would dictate whether they get to the 6 wins and make a bowl game. So I looked at all my 5 and 7 predicted teams, which were Wisconsin, UCLA, Michigan State, and Rutgers, and then looked at games that they lost, that I predicted they lost, that maybe they could win. And the winner actually turned out to be Wisconsin at Minnesota for me in the last week of the season. The week before that, Illinois comes in to Camp Randall, and that game you can't say it's underrated, because for Illinois it could mean make the playoffs or not, and for Wisconsin they would love to ruin Bielema's season with Illinois, right? And Illinois is a rival. But if they lose that game, I really think Wisconsin will go in that next week needing to beat Minnesota to get the 6 wins. That's important for Fickell. I don't think he's going to get fired even if he doesn't, but I think being in a bowl, you get more practice time, right? More practice reps. It's a better story for recruits. And I think that's a big game for Wisconsin to build momentum. And that's why I'm calling that an underrated game for me.
And more people need to know about the Axe Trophy. Like, it's the coolest trophy.
I mean, I definitely think it will be a game that people recognize in the Big Ten because of the implications of the rivalry and everything like that. However, you're right, Jeff, with all the talk this season about Wisconsin, is Luke Fickell going to be fired or not, stuff like that. Illinois is going to have the spice because it could be a possible playoff entry game or not. But the Minnesota-Wisconsin one, that's one that more Big Ten fans and people who pay attention to this conference will need to make sure they're on top of, because it really could impact, A, things with Luke Fickell, and B, just the direction of the program overall. And also Minnesota too. That could be a game that could elevate Minnesota to possibly 8-9 wins. And if they get there, that's a huge season for Minnesota.
Yeah, much better bowls could be at risk for them too.
Yeah. Lots of good storylines there. That's a good one, Jeff.
Zach, what do you got?
So I went a little different. I was thinking about games that are a little under the radar, but could be an upset for a team that maybe is a bigger team that could prop the other team either into playoff contention or into a better national spotlight. So I've got 2. One is Oregon at Iowa in week 11. Like, Oregon's coming off a bye. I think people would expect Oregon to beat Iowa, but Iowa's also coming off a bye, and it's in Kinnick. And so if it's at night, especially, I could see where that could knock Oregon out of playoff contention, or it could propel Iowa to a much better season and maybe playoff consideration at the end. The other one, and Jeff, you have this, you picked this as an upset, Ohio State at Washington. The big game that week is Penn State, Oregon. But like I think it's going to be the 3:30 CBS game. Ohio State at Washington, I think, is an underrated game. A lot of people will have Ohio State at Illinois circled in that 4-game stretch. But that Washington game, I think, is going to be really tricky for the Buckeyes too. And so I think I have that circled as one of my underrated games.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff. The Oregon at Iowa one, I do think that's probably one that'll get a little bit more juice as it comes up, but it's not really one that's being seen as that right now. And it's also coming off that Penn State Ohio State game the week before it, and that's obviously the one that's going to get a lot of the recognition before that one. So good picks there, Zach. I'm going to go. So I thought about USC Michigan, as Max pointed out there. I feel like that's one that's going to get a lot of hype going into it with Michigan and USC. I think both of those teams could have good records by that time. One, maybe two losses, but not, maybe both teams undefeated too. We'll see. But I think that's going to be one that's really interesting, especially with how things ended last year, right? Can USC avenge what happened with their defense, with Kalel Mullings kind of breaking off the big run there and then being able to get the win late in the game? That's going to be a game that means a lot for USC. So I think that one's a little bit too hyped up. And then Philip says here, Rutgers versus Minnesota. You're right. Kirk Shiraka. The storylines with the coaches, Athan Kaliakmanis. That's a really good one.
Good one
to think about there.
And bowl implications for Rutgers there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good thought. I think the one that not enough people are paying attention to right now, and it's because I think it's being overshadowed by that Indiana-Illinois game, is Indiana at Iowa, and then also Illinois USC. I think those two games there in Week 5, they're going to be overshadowed because you have Ohio State at Washington, you have you have what's the other one? Oh no, Wisconsin, Michigan's the week later. I apologize, but I think those two games are going to get overshadowed by Ohio State, Washington, and I think those are going to be important ones too, especially for whichever team loses that game between Indiana and Illinois, because that's going to be a must-win game if you want to vie for the playoffs after that. And it's also going to be a must-win game for USC and for Iowa, because those are going to be, possibly their biggest test of the season so far. So really important games there.
Good stuff, JR. That's good.
Any other thoughts on underrated games before we move on, guys?
A lot of candidates, man.
There are. All right, well, let's get to sleeper teams, all right? So we'll do sleeper teams, and then we can kind of do disappointing teams after that. But let's start with sleeper teams. Zach, we'll let you start here. Zach, who are some teams in the Big Ten, or maybe one or two teams in the Big Ten that you picked lower in your Big Ten predictions that you think have the opportunity to be higher? You didn't pick them to be higher, but you yourself could be sleeping on too much.
You asked me this pre-show, and I missed the part where you said teams that I picked to be lower. So I told you Washington, and I'm like, no, I picked Washington and USC to do really well this season. So forget that. I'm going to audible here. I will, because I picked, Max said Washington could be a sleeper. I agree, but I think they're going to do really well.
Yeah. Not a sleeper for us because we picked them to do well in a lot. Yeah.
So honestly, I don't have super high expectations for Minnesota, but PJ Fleck just wins. And I don't have Minnesota. I think I have them 7-5. I forget. I need to find
you do 7 and 5.
Yeah. 7-5.
Yeah.
7-5. But I can see a world where they spring an upset or two with a young quarterback, and they end up 9-3, and maybe bordering on say they get a big upset win. They don't have a lot of opportunities for upset wins, but like their schedule's manageable enough where they could go anywhere from 8-4 to 10-2. So I think I'll go with Minnesota as one of my underrated teams. The other one, and someone, Philip poked it at me, but there is a world where Iowa is in playoff contention.
Yeah, it's not just a world. They just have to be consistent. They have to be what they've been in years before. And if they're 10-2, they have a likely shot at it, Yeah. So, yeah, beat Indiana and beat 10-2, and, Iowa's going to be right there. But Steely Matt shared the stream. We appreciate you doing that. Steely Matt, they're on X. If anybody else is watching on X and you would like to repost the stream, we always appreciate if you would do that. Thank you, Steely Matt, for consistently doing that. All right, let's look at some teams here for me. So I have 3 teams that I feel like I was too low on that could possibly win 2, maybe 3 more games than I thought. So Rutgers and UCLA, I both had 5-7. I believe UCLA was 5-7. For me, if not 5-7, they might have been 4-8. I think those are 2 teams that could both be bowl eligible. I actually think this Rutgers team is a better team in a lot of cases than they were last season. I think losing Kyle Monangai is huge. However, Athan Kaliakmanis continues to improve. I think the offensive line, they lost Holland Pierce, but they can continue to improve that. DT Sheffield, I know I said that the Rutgers offense would be worse, but that could surprise me. Maybe Greg Schiano starts airing it out a little bit more. Maybe he starts relying on that more. Maybe Kirk Soraka, his second year with Athan Kaliakmanis at Rutgers, it starts to look a whole lot better. And I do like this defense as well that Rutgers has. So this could possibly be a more talented team than Rutgers had last year. It's just the hard part with them is that schedule, So do they catch a team or two, get a win, get some wins over them, and do they finish the season 7-5 and win their bowl game this year and go 8-5? It could happen. I could be too low on Rutgers. And then UCLA, too. I mean, the hype right now for Nico Iamaleava at UCLA fall camp is like some of the biggest hype you're going to find for a player. Talking about how he's worth like 2 or 3 games for them. I don't know if I buy it. I want to see it first, but I have to acknowledge Nico Iamaleava. He has the potential. He has, everything that you need to be a really good quarterback. And Tino Sinceri with him as well. Quasi Gilmer, if he can really turn into a breakout receiver this season, like I think he might be able to, that could be huge for them. And then if that defense gets right, and like we know, Deshaun Foster is going to get his guys to play hard, do well. And then USC. I picked USC to go 7-5, but that was probably like my least comfortable pick because I just think USC is going to get into tier 1 at some point. If it's not this season, it might be next season, might be the season after that. But I think Lincoln Riley still has it in him. I think they run that program really well with Chad Bowen, however you pronounce his name. And I think they're going to get up there at some point. So those are probably my 3. Jeff, sorry if I took yours.
No, I mean, I like that. My second was Michigan State. I have them 5-7. I said in my review last week, I think they're a year away. But with Aiden Childs, if he makes a leap, then I underestimated them. But I didn't select them. I selected USC, JR. I know you just mentioned them. I said on my podcast, I guess 2 times ago, to me, no, it was last week. To me, they're the biggest sleeper team as far as I think they have a potential to make the playoffs. So you kind of said, who's the next Indiana? No one is, because no one's going to go from 2-10 to making the playoffs. But a surprise team to make the playoffs, I wouldn't be that surprised if USC did it. And just, I have them 8-4. The over-under is only 7.5, though. But they're recruiting well, 5-year recruiting average of 23, proven coach, like you said. I mean, I know people like to rag on him, but I mean, he did really well at Oklahoma, just a great offensive mind, and he has a good defensive coordinator, right? So they blew 3 fourth quarter leads. Last year's team should have been more like 9-4, 8-5 at least, not 7-6. And then I just look at 2 high potential wins that I have as losses at Illinois week 5. USC flat out has more talent than Illinois, flat out. So I wouldn't be shocked if they went into Illinois and won, but I have that as a loss. And then Michigan at home I have as a loss. But, I definitely see that's one that's 50-50 in my book. Young quarterback for Michigan, probably I'd pick USC if you had the gun to my head. So really USC is the one for me, potential even to make the playoffs.
I like that. that.
That's good.
All right. Zach, we'll let you start this one off again. Disappointing teams. Who is a team that you had maybe winning 8 or more, maybe 9 or more games that you're like, listen, I picked them to win this many games, but I am not super confident in them. Zach, I'm thinking of one team that you picked to win 10 games, and if you don't say them, I'll say them for you afterward, but go ahead.
It wouldn't happen to be Nebraska, would it?
Yes, it is Nebraska.
Yeah. About that. I don't like it. About that. I think it starts with Nebraska for sure. The schedule is manageable for them, but there's definitely, we've said that about Nebraska for how many years when they were in the Big Ten West. So for me, and I think we've all said this at some point, Nebraska just has to prove it. Dylan Raiola has to prove it. And for the past 9 years, they haven't proven it. So 10-2, with caution is my. I will say the other two that I'm thinking of, and it's. I hate to say it, and I'm going to get ragged on in the comments, but it is Illinois and Indiana. Illinois, I think, returns a lot of production. I think there's a lot of good momentum. Obviously, I really trust Bret Bielema. But Jeff, you made a really good point just now about them playing USC. USC has more talent. Now, is it proven or developed? We don't know. But like that's the issue that I see with Illinois is you've got to play at Indiana. You've got to play USC at home. You've got to play Ohio State. You got to play at Washington. You got to play at Duke. And you can't just rely on being bigger, faster, stronger. Like that's not how Illinois is going to win. Mm-hmm. And they won a lot of close games. And often what happens when you have a good season like that, you tend to return to the mean. So I'm a little concerned about Illinois. I want them to do well, and I think they can do well, but I think that's something to look out for. And I think Indiana, there's a big question mark about can they hit on the transfer portal like they did a year ago and be the team they were. And again, they have a much tougher schedule this year. So I think Nebraska is certainly number one, the team that is most likely going to disappoint me. But I would not be shocked if Illinois and Indiana are both disappointing as well.
All right. Okay. Zach got away from Indiana, and now he's not nearly on their high horse as much as he was.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened.
I'm just messing with you. We'll go to Jeff here in just a second, but David wanted to give his 2 cents in there. David, we appreciate you watching and being here. He says, I think this could be a year where Ohio State and Oregon both miss the playoffs. I understand their talent level, but they both lost a lot of talent and experience as well. So, yeah, I think you could be in line for a 10-9 win season for Ohio State and Oregon, but I tend to believe both those two teams, Ohio State probably makes it with 9 wins. Oregon, they have a little bit of an easier schedule, so I'm not sure if they would. But I see what your sentiment there, David, and it is something I wanted to bring up because I was going to possibly bring up Ohio State and Oregon just with some of the question marks that other people kind of have about them outside right now. So good thought there, David. Jeff, I won't take yours this time unless I guess you had Ohio State or Oregon. Then
no, I'll hit on mine quick. I mean, Illinois was a candidate for me. I have them 9-3, but mostly because their schedule is really easy. And I think the coaching staff is outstanding. I just doubt their depth of talent, as simple as that. So, Nebraska, I have going 9-3 as well, Zach. So that's a game and a half over the FanDuel over-under. But I actually believe they're going to do that. I think Varela is going to take the jump. Rule's a good coach. I don't worry about the past under previous regimes as much. But I'm going with Minnesota. I predicted them 8-4 in my podcast. They're over-under a 6.5. So that's a game and a half over Vegas. Over-under, that's a lot because Vegas really knows what they're doing. I had said I think that's the ceiling for them. So I was assuming with that record, Minnesota with a young first-year starting quarterback, and I know he's a redshirt freshman, right? Drake Lindsay. I'm just leery of any first-year starting quarterbacks. I do believe in PJ Fleck, though, and is why I think they'll hit the 8-4 and hit their ceiling. But I could be wrong, especially if Lindsay struggles. And then they for sure have a bunch of games that are really, at Cal early, right? That's second game, I believe. Young quarterback on the road. I know it's not a hornet's nest at Cal, but still, it's a road game. So, I think Minnesota, I worry a little bit about really based on the young quarterback.
That makes sense. I didn't write down Minnesota, but that was one that I was thinking we might have put down at some point because I think all of us did select them to at least win 7 games, maybe 8 games. All of us.
We did. You had them 8-4 as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So the disappointing teams that I did have Oregon as a thought on there. I'm not going to say they're my disappointing team, but I did have them on there as a possible thought. Ohio State as well. They have that road game against Washington. You have Texas early on. What happens if Ohio State starts 2-2 with a new starting quarterback going to Washington? That could possibly be disappointing there. And then Oregon, Dante Moore and losing Evan Stewart and now Trey McNutt, stuff like that, just could play for some disappointing stuff there. I don't think either of them miss the playoffs, but I could see 9-10 wins. Maybe one of them misses the playoff. But I'm going to put in here, I didn't have Nebraska as high as you, Zach, so I can't say Nebraska. But the team I did have winning 9 games, they have a true freshman quarterback. They have some early games on the road. It might be Michigan for me. Is the team that I feel like the least confident on. And I'm not trying to pick on Michigan here because, like I just said, it's kind of the same thing with Minnesota, right? You got a young quarterback. I think Michigan starts the season a little bit tougher. I don't think Cal is nearly the environment that USC, Oklahoma, or Nebraska is. And Minnesota really only has that one to kind of start in the out-of-conference in Cal. So it depends for me how Michigan starts the season, right? If Michigan begins the season and they're 4-0, I got no worries. They're going to win at least 9 games if they start the season 4-0 in my book. But if they drop to, just like I said with Ohio State, so don't come at me, Michigan fans, because I just said the same thing about Ohio State. If they drop 2 of those and they go 2-2 or something like that, then I'm starting to have concerns, and then I'm starting to think to myself, okay, does this team have enough momentum to get themselves to that 9-3 type of situation, or are they going to rely on a surge at the end to get them to 8 wins with a bowl game or something like that? So those are my thoughts there. All right, let's get to our next one here, which is Coach of the Year. So looking at your predictions and everything else, who would be your Coach of the Year? Jeff, I'll let you start out with this one.
Good. Go with me because normally I'm not real negative, but this is the most annoying of all Big Ten awards. It so often does not reward excellence. Basically, they reward mediocrity. So really, you're going to look at the team that disappointed and they get the bounce back year. And it's so funny. Usually the team that has the bounce back year, Coach of the Year, and then the next year they come back down to earth and it just looks so stupid. So I'm looking at like the 5-7 team. So candidates are Michigan State 5-7 last year, Nebraska 7-6 last year, Washington was 6-7 last year, UCLA was 5-7 last year. So those mid-range teams that could like win 3 more, that's what's going to rule the day. So I'm going with, based on my predictive records, Matt Rule. Matt Rule is going to be Coach of the Year. Take them from a 6-6 regular season to 9-3. Coach of the Year, Matt Rule. Simple as that, but not excellence, right? They don't take the guys who are winning the national title. Urban Meyer just lit up the Big Ten. He never won a single Coach of the Year. It's just kind of a joke. But anyway, I'm usually not that negative. I'm sorry, but this award is just
there's so many things that go along with it, right? James Franklin could possibly win it this season, but you're really not going to see a tier 1 team coach win it unless there's just no surprising team out there. They might get like a co-win or something like that, but generally Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan, their head coach is not going to win this award. Now, Michigan could this year, coming off a 8-5 season last year and stuff, so Sharon Moore could win it this time, but even like Kirk Sidnetti at Indiana after going 11-1 last year, I don't think he can win it. Right. Unless he goes 12-0, right? It's almost like you have to one up what you did last year for it. But in my book, if Kirk Sidnetti goes 10-2 this season, based on what everybody says about Indiana and how they're not going to repeat, I think he'd be a pretty good candidate for it. So, Zach, your Coach of the Year.
So I'm going to push back on all of what you just said because I have James Franklin.
Well, like I said, James Franklin could win it. Yeah.
I think undefeated I could see it.
He could at least be a too.
But it's very rare. Right. I mean,
it's rare. And maybe I'm not pushing back. I don't know if there's going to be a team that really takes a massive leap. And I do think because Penn State hasn't won the Big Ten in 9 years, if James Franklin beats Ohio State or they go 11-1, I think they probably have to go undefeated, but I just think James Franklin is going to get it. I don't think there's going to be any team that pops so big that we don't expect that's going to be able to overtake him. So I've got James Franklin.
If Barry Odom wins 6 games, does he win?
No. Unless if he upsets somebody big.
Well, if he wins 6 games, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, hold on. Okay. So
with that schedule, they have a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
yeah, okay. I concede.
It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah,
I just look at what everybody thinks about Purdue, right? Everybody treats Purdue like a MAC level program. I've called them that on this channel multiple times. It's more out of frustration than anything else because they were so good under Jeff Brom, and then Ryan Walters just all the way into the floor. But that's just more my frustration than anything else with Ryan Walters. I don't mean it at the Purdue program. It's more my
that was a very technical term. That was good.
I thought you might like that.
Yeah. I was going to say one other coach that could easily steal it from like a James Franklin is Deshaun Foster. Like if UCLA pops with Nico, as you were saying before, like if they go 7-5, 8-4, yeah.
But let's be honest, if your predictions play out and Nebraska is 10-2, Matt Rule's winning it, no doubt.
Yeah. No, you're probably right.
You might slap a co on there for like a James Franklin or somebody like that. But if Nebraska goes 10-2, there's no doubt they're going to
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I would say James Franklin would only get it if there's not a typical big leap from a UCLA 5-7. That'd be the only way in my book that Franklin would get it.
How many wins does Matt Rule need to get Coach of the Year?
9.
Yeah.
I think the expectation this season is to win at least 8. I think if you get to 9 or more, unless James Franklin goes undefeated, unless Kirk Cinetti goes undefeated, I think you get 9 wins, you're winning at least the Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
So I should probably do a big Jeff's analysis on coaches of the year and
it sounds like you're passionate about it, Jeff. So maybe you squeeze it in there.
It aggravates me, so I'd be angrier and I'm not normally mad. So
Big Jeff's angry insights. Let's do one of those episodes. All right, so my coach of the year, if it plays out the way my predictions are, right now I have Illinois 11-2 and making the playoffs. If that happens, it's no doubt. I know they would have the same number of wins as last year, but this would be in the regular season and not include the bowl season. If Illinois goes 11-2 this season, they make the playoffs. It's no doubt Bret Bielema is the coach of the year.
He'll have my vote. It won't be worth anything, but he'd have my vote if that happens.
Have your vote though.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay. So very good. Very good. Let's move on to some player of the year and like breakout player of the year, stuff like that. So let's do offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, and then breakout player of the year. So let's go offensive player of the year first. I'll go first with mine, and then we'll move over to Jeff. So my offensive player of the year, I have 3 selections here. I have my most obvious one. I have my one that's I think this has a likelihood of happening, but I don't know if I see it happening. I want to see it happen first. And then my other one is I don't think this will happen, but it's kind of a wild card that it could possibly happen. My offensive player of the year, I have Jeremiah Smith. I think he's got the hype, everything else, unless he, completely falls off. I think he wins it. I think if Penn State has a really good season, goes 12-0, wins the Big Ten, I think he probably wins Offensive Player of the Year. And then my kind of wild cardy one, could possibly do it, but I don't know if they would actually give it to him or not, would be Jada Maiava, USC quarterback. So, but I think he could have a good enough season, even if they only go 9-3 or something like that. I think he could have a good enough season. They would give it to him, or like a Dylan Raiola, somebody like that.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, who you got?
Yeah, I would just say that Jeremiah Smith might be obvious, but so many Ohio State players have won this award. We probably could check that out. It's really amazing, and probably not surprising to people how prolific they've been offensively. But I'm looking at, a little out of the box here. I did a podcast, May 22nd podcast on projecting all the Big Ten passers in their passer ratings. And number 1 was Drew Aller, but I don't think he's going to win it. So number 2, though, was Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. I'm going with him as offensive player of the year. I had projected 3,042 yards passing, 23 TDs, 8 INTs, 69% completion percent. And like I said, having the second best rating in the conference. It's not going to go to a running back. It's just too hard to happen. And typically a quarterback is winning these type of awards more and more, kind of like the Heisman, right? Yeah. It's becoming a quarterback award. So I'm going with Fernando Mendoza.
Good pick. Zach?
So I have Fernando Mendoza as my number 2. I have Jeremiah Smith as my number 3. My number 1 is actually a running back.
Zach is just not agreeing with any of us tonight.
No,
okay.
No. Well, but I agree in general that I think it's hard for a running back to win.
Unless, not impossible.
Unless if you specifically design things. And I think Nicholas Singleton is a running back in an offense that could be utilized in a way where he is running, passing, and maybe even throwing. So I have Nicholas Singleton as the best player, the best offensive player on the best team in the Big Ten.
So my pushback on that would be just like last year with Travion Henderson and Judkins, just split the stats being split between those two, and therefore, one of them not being the bell cow and the stats they need to win this award.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and I think, and I could be completely wrong on this. I wonder if Singleton becomes like the Tyler Warren this year, and maybe that's too much guesswork. But I just think Kotelnicki likes to design plays for his best players. And like Katrin Allen is a really good player. Like I don't want to take anything away from him. But I just there's another gear with Singleton. So but but I think you're right, Jeff. Like I think if they split carries too much, I think Mendoza and Smith are probably my 1 and 2. But
I think for me the difference for me with Singleton and Allen and Henderson and Judkins is that Singleton and Allen both have the opportunity to break the career rushing record for Penn State. And I think if you get that record, that gives you a little bit extra juice. And then the award not only is for the season, but it's also kind of like a career award as well, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And the Big Ten loves their career awards.
They do.
Legends and leaders, right?
yeah. Just go and put Nicholas Singleton in the Legends and Leaders thing. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, let's do defensive player. Oh, where do we go? There it is. Defensive player of the year. Jeff, I'll let you start on this one. Who you got for this one?
So this one is the hardest award to predict because it can come from many different positions. But really, it needs to come up from a team that has lots of big games on big stages. I'm just keeping it simple. I'm going with the best defensive player that many think is in college football and the best NFL prospect in the Big Ten on the defensive side. Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. It also helps that he's going to return some punts, probably. I mean, I'm thinking he might. That could add to his value. So just Caleb Downs is my pick.
Ditto. I think you said it quite excellently, Jeff. I think it's Caleb Downs. I will give 2 dark horses, though. And they're not really dark horses. I think Mateo Uyunglele, if they just let him loose as a pass rusher.
Yep.
And then the other one who's a pass rusher, and this is like big time dark horse, Kenyatta Jackson. I know there's a lot, like there's Gabe Yakis, there's Mikel Kamara. There's a lot of hype for Kenyatta Jackson right now. And if you have a pass rusher out of Ohio State who gets double-digit sacks, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to ignore them.
I was going to say, Zach, if you went with him, why wasn't he your breakout player of the year? Maybe he is that as well then.
I was going to say, that sounds like more of a breakout player of the year type of candidate than a defensive player of the year.
But a breakout player could win the defensive player of the year, too.
It's true. Yeah.
I do have a different breakout player, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Jake, it's no secret. I do love Eric Gentry. That has
Yep.
been well documented on here before. Unfortunately, I just don't know if a linebacker, unless they have a Jay Higgins type season where they have just like over 100 tackles and all that stuff, I don't know if they're gonna. And that's kind of, I mean, I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna make the Iowa fans mad. Um, but that like, I don't know if I see a linebacker winning the award, unless there is like some kind of like career milestone that goes with it, or just like some outstanding tackle amount or
They're
something
going to have
like
to
that.
get some turnovers, like some
Yeah,
interceptions among their
yeah.
stats.
But rest assured, I do love me some Eric Gentry. So let that be known. Okay. Defensive player of the year, I had Coy Parrish. If he has the same type of interception stuff, if he's playing both sides of the ball, I think he's going to get close to winning that award, if not winning it. Caleb Downs in there as well. I don't think Caleb Downs will really have the stats because he's not like that roaming free safety that's going to get you 6, 7, 8 interceptions. But I do think he's going to be recognized for very good play. And then the other ones are like your standard kind of edge rushers, that one of these guys is just going to have a crazy amount of sacks this season, whether it's Gabe Yakis, Mikael Kamara, Mateo Uyunglele, Derek Moore, somebody at Ohio State like a Kenyatta Jackson. I'm probably missing somebody, and I'm going to hear about it from their fans in the chat. Deny Dennis Sutton, right? Like some kind of edge rusher that just completely goes off and gets a crazy amount of sacks would probably be the one that would win that somewhere in there. And sometimes it just depends on how good the coverage is behind them, because all these guys are going to get to the quarterback, but not all of them are going to have good enough coverage behind them to give them the opportunity to get there. So my safe pick here will be Coy Parrish, but there's a litany of edge rushers in this conference that if they have a good enough pass defense behind them, they're going to rack up 10, 11, 12, 13 sacks this season and get considered for it. So,
Nice.
All right. Zach, we'll let you start with the breakout player of the year. Is it Kenyatta Jackson?
It's not, although he's definitely he would, if he does what I think he's going to do, he would definitely qualify.
Okay.
But the guy, and I think we've talked about him before. I think Damon Williams at Washington is going to be
Great pick. Yeah.
I think he is going to have a stellar season, and I think that's why many of us are high on Washington this year. Is I think he's going to be a true dual threat guy who has a lot of stats, maybe threatened for offensive player of the year. But I think everybody will know who Damon Williams is by the end of the season.
That's a great pick. Great pick. Jeff, who you got?
That's a great pick. There's good candidates, but this one was easy for me. Junior running back Justice Haynes from Michigan. Now, I'm a little biased. He is from Alpharetta, Georgia. That's where I live. And he actually started in high school at Blessed Trinity, which is in my son's, who plays football, region. So we're going to play Blessed Trinity, unfortunately, the second to last game of the season, and they're loaded with Division I talent. But then he transferred to Buford High School, which was, big national power. That's where Dylan Raiola went. I watched him in the Georgia playoffs. I mean, he is just a special back. Had a good year at Bama last year, about 450 yards rushing, 5.7 yards per carry. And he's just perfect for Michigan. They have a young quarterback in Underwood. Michigan wants to run. They're going to double down on running with given that Underwood's young, and they're going to roll out Underwood some and run him some as well. But I expect Haynes to go for 1,000 plus and really be a big viable candidate to win this breakout player of the year.
That's interesting you say that, Jeff, because my breakout player of the year, or one of them, is Jordan Marshall.
Yeah. I think Haynes is better. He's better.
No, I don't know which one is better. Marshall flashed in the game against Alabama. Haynes was a backup at Alabama, but he definitely flashed in some of the carries that he got there as well. So I think it's appropriate to say one of these two Michigan running backs has a very, very good chance of being the breakout player of the year. Damon Williams is a great choice. Dylan Raiola is another great option. Aiden Childs, like you talked about with your sleeper pick, possible sleeper pick there, Jeff, about Michigan State. If this offense really lights things up with Michigan State this season, that could be a good possibility for the breakout player of the year if he fixes up those turnovers, and he has a really good wide receiver core as well.
He has a one.
If that offensive line gives him time, he could be the breakout player of the year as well. So I think one of the Michigan running backs, either Haynes or Marshall, Royola, Williams. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. Childs. I don't think Fernando Mendoza would get it. Fernando Mendoza's getting like first round type of thoughts right now and grades. So I don't think he would be a candidate for breakout player of the year. But I think some people might think that because there are some people out there that just don't recognize how good Fernando Mendoza.
And I wonder if Royola would fall in that bucket too, even though he didn't have a great year, but it's almost like he's kind of expected to be really better. And Dara, I do agree on Michigan, but this is dependent for Michigan on that line being much better than last year. If that offensive line is not significantly better, it doesn't matter how good these guys are. They're not going to have.
We talked about it last Tuesday. Sharon Moore came out and said that the offensive line for Michigan is pushing the defensive line more. And as we know, the defensive line is one of the biggest strengths for this Michigan team. So if the offensive line is holding their own against that defensive line for Michigan, then that seems to bode good news for the Michigan fans and their team. But as with most things, and I don't just say that about Michigan, I say it about pretty much every team. We'll see when they start playing the games. That's kind of for sure how it goes.
We'll find out how good that Michigan offensive line is against Oklahoma. I'll tell you that.
That's true. Yeah, Oklahoma has a very good defensive line. So
yeah, that's true. One more potential breakout player that I'll throw out there: Hudson Clement out of Illinois. They need someone to step up at receiver with losing Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant. There is a lot of excitement. If you heard Luke Altmaier at Media Days, he talked about the loss of Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin and how that would hurt. But then he got a big grin about the talent they have in that receiver room. So we talked about it a little bit last show, just that there is a lot of rotation. But I think Hudson Clement's going to be one of those guys that really does break out this season.
I think Hudson Clement is going to rack up the yards and be a very good option for him. I'm interested to see who that guy is that is kind of like the star wide receiver, right? Who is the guy that is the third down option? They consistently go to him, get the ball out to him. I don't know if he'll necessarily have the yards and stuff like that of a Hudson Clement, but I think he'll kind of get the recognition of being like that reliable guy. Mm-hmm. I was hesitant to pick an Illinois wide receiver just because there's so many. It sounds like there's so many good ones in there, but we just don't know which one will be the star guy, right? It's kind of an interesting situation, but good pick. I've been high on the Hudson Clement train as well. So, all right. I think John says, is Moneyline Mateer cleared to play versus Michigan? Yeah, as far as we know. Moneyline Mateer.
What a great.
That is such a great nickname. We'll have to keep calling him that. As far as I know, he is. So.
I was gonna say FanDuel loves that, right? Yeah,
they do.
It's like writes their publicity for them.
Well, what is the line on that Michigan Oklahoma game again? Isn't it like 2.5? I think Oklahoma is favored. I'm trying to find it really fast.
I don't know. I feel like we need to make a graphic of Moneyline Mateer now.
Yeah. Well, we already have our Paul Feinbaum graphic. So. Yeah, Oklahoma is favored by 2.5. Unranked Oklahoma is favored by 2.5 over Michigan. So, yeah. So kind of wild, but Josh Pate had Oklahoma in his top 10 of his Pate poll or whatever it's called.
Vegas doesn't care about who the AP poll is. I mean,
yeah.
Well, true. Oklahoma is ranked in the AP poll. Oklahoma's 18th in the AP poll.
Oklahoma's? I thought they weren't ranked in the AP. Or was it the coaches poll?
The coaches poll, they're not ranked.
That's right. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Sorry. Got those mixed up. So. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Gentlemen, any other thoughts or anything before we end it here?
2 weeks away,
close,
guys.
Baby. Yeah. Getting
2
close.
weeks away.
Hey.
Go ahead.
My son's team played, he's still out with the injury, but we had a little lightning delay, so it started an hour and a half later on Friday night. But we got down 20-7. We had 3 turnovers. They had 0. So that's the reason. Then we got a couple turnovers. We scored to go up 21-20, got the ball back with 5.5 minutes left, and ran the clock out. Kind of like, it was a little like Ohio State versus Penn State, one of those deals. And it was pretty sweet.
That's beautiful.
A lot of fans. I mean, we had more fans there for this road game than they had. So it was pretty cool. So we're off to a 1-0 start.
There we go. Love it. Jeff, you'll have to let us know what Big Ten team are they most like this season.
I'll have to think about that, because we're an underdog type team. And we, like I mentioned, Blessed Trinity, they've got a defensive end who's a 5-star. Some have him as like, one recruiting service had him the 2nd rated player in the country. Another, his last name's Jacobs, his son, and his dad played at Georgia. He's the 11th rated composite, but he's only a junior this year. So we could play him for the next 2 years, which will be a lot of fun. Yeah. Like he's a game record. He's already 6'3", 240, in high school as a junior. It's a nightmare. Crazy. We have nobody who can block him.
That's Georgia football for you. There's
one
guy in there that just
so true.
Crazy. Goes crazy. All right. Thank you everybody for being here in the chat. We had a wonderful chat tonight. Very active. Appreciate all of you sharing your thoughts, breakout players, offensive player of the year, stuff like that, coach of the year, all those things. We appreciate you being here. And Zach and I will be back on Tuesday night, and then Jeff and I will be here on Thursday night as well. So catch us then. Probably I don't know what we're going to do Tuesday night yet, and then Jeff will have do you know what you're doing Thursday night yet,
I don't
Jeff?
know yet. I don't know. I have several good ideas, but it will be good no matter what.
All right. Well, if we know Tuesday night, we'll let you know, but it should be a good time. So thank you everybody for listening. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.